Welcome to the RevOps Lab, a podcast exploring the art and science of revenue operations. To find more episodes and resources on scaling your revenue engine, visit getweflow.com/RevOps.
This episode is brought to you by Weflow, the easiest way to automate Salesforce data capture. Are you tired of chasing reps for clean CRM data? Weflow auto-captures emails, meetings, and contacts from Google or Microsoft, maps them to the right records, and stores them in Salesforce permanently. Our A9 note taker transcribes meetings, populates fields across any Salesforce object, and syncs everything, including AI summaries and transcripts, back to Salesforce. So you stay in control and your pipeline stays clean. That's what RevOps teams at Plecklane, Coder, ID Now, and many more love about Weflow. Start your free 14-day trial with a quick intro call at getweflow.com today. Hello and welcome to another edition of the RevOps Lab podcast. I'm here together with Yannis. Yeah, Yannis is like a little bit sick. You can hear it like a little bit in his voice. So yeah, I hope you can make it through the podcast. It's amazing that you can join, even while being sick. And our guest today is Franco Anzini. Franco, hello. Nice to meet you.
Hey, guys.
Yeah, hey. Good to meet you. And Franco, who are you? What do you do?
Oh, boy. I suppose I would classify myself as a revenue operations professional. I've been living in the revenue operations world for longer than I care to admit, ever since way back when it was just called sales ops, and been working at companies of various stages of maturity, various industries, various go-to-market motions, and so have seen all the movies, as they say, around revenue operations and continuing to help companies scale their go-to-market motion. Once they've found product market fit, then how do we start to get the go-to-market engine cranking with marketing on the front end, sales in the middle, and then the customer piece post-sale. So been doing that, and outside of that, just a normal person living a normal life, 2 kids who play a lot of sports, and I get caught up in that a lot.
All right, good. Yeah. Glad to hear we're not talking to an alien today. No, kidding, obviously. Yeah, no, no, it's good. Yeah, and then you were in Southern California, right? I think.
I'm in the Bay Area. Yeah, I'm in the Bay Area.
Bay Area. Yeah, right. That's not that southern anymore. All right. And our topic today is stay close to where the money changes hands, basically. So we said in advance, which I think is a super interesting topic. But Franco, do you want to just give us a perspective on what you mean when you say stay close to where the money changes hands?
It's an interesting topic because I think more and more with everything happening in the world over the past couple of years, and likely what we're going to see in the future, the revenue operations profession has largely stayed very data focused, which is great. We need our data, right? But I think there's this movement for revenue operations folks to get a bit out of the data and get their hands dirty, right? Roll up their sleeves. I think sometimes when people say, "Oh, I need you to roll up your sleeves," they're not talking about rolling up your sleeves and changing the code in one of your systems, right? They're talking about learning how the business functions. And I think to do that, I had a manager years ago who was great. And he would always say, if you want to understand how a business works, get close to where the money changes hands, because that's where the transactions are happening. That's where the decisions are made. That's where you're learning why the decisions are made. And that in our world is working with customers, with prospects, and with partners, and figuring out what's happening at the ground level with those interactions that are driving decisions that stakeholders are making, and then how those permeate into your go-to-market motion and some of the operational pieces that you're trying to refine and optimize. So I always like to tell members on my team, go talk to some customers, get out in the field with some sales reps, talk to partners, talk to prospects, listen to a bunch of meetings and calls, and really understand the art in the art and science mix that we know exists in any sort of operational role.
Yeah, perfect. I really like it. And I mean, unsurprisingly for many of our listeners, maybe this resonates really well with me, coming more from like a product background, right? I think it's the exact same thing. Like you don't talk, if you keep developing your product, which basically RevOps, like you also, right? You work on a product, like the sales product. And then if you don't talk to like your customers, the users in the end also, then like how would you even know whether it really works and whether what you are building and developing actually serves any real purpose, gets proper adoption. Like numbers can only tell you that much. And I think particularly like this art piece, that is super critical. And like also just to add to that, like also like I've been doing like sales for the past 2 years, which I haven't done before, like on that scale at least. And there's just so many insights and just like new experiences that I was able to gather. Just like being forced in that position, having to sell something, and then going through the pain of what it means to write like follow-up emails and back-to-back meetings. It's just you get like a completely different perspective on the work of salespeople. And just I think understanding the pain, going through the pain, I think there's so much value, because that's I think where innovation also comes from. So yeah, I think it's an amazing topic. Like one thing I'd love to dive deeper into is sort of like what are some tactics or frameworks that have you seen that work well to roll up the sleeves and stay close to where the money changes hands.
Yeah, I think we have to be cognizant of who the stakeholders are, number one. And I always tell folks on my teams and in my organizations that the revenue operations role, the first word is revenue. So let's not lose sight of that, right? And so when we think about revenue, what brings revenue into an organization? And largely it's your customers are buying a software, a service, a product, right? And so you have to be really cognizant of that. Now, there are sales processes that every company has, and there's associated metrics that flow from that. But what we often lose sight of is the why. So we have this great sales process of qualification and finding pain and so on. But why are people engaging with us? Like, what is the underlying reason? What is happening in their business, in their world, that is putting them into our process that we have that we can then gather data, right? So I think you kind of start at the beginning with the why, and that will ultimately dovetail into the value proposition that a company is offering to its customers, and that's your anchor point to tying it back to a sales process, whether it's Medic or Bant or whatever. Like, okay, there's some pain there, and now there's value, and now we can start mapping the two together, right? So I think that would be kind of the umbrella that you would put everything under. In terms of a framework, there's no kind of easy way to this. I know that in RevOps we love to automate things, and whether that is taking call recordings and transcribing them and putting them as notes somewhere in a system, and now running some AI against them, that's all well and good, but there are still some underlying sentiment and intonation things that happen on calls and interactions. And so the framework is really quite straightforward, which is don't just rely on the data that's flowing through your system, but go listen to it or see it at the ground level. And so I always encourage folks on my team, go on some sales calls with some sellers, or if you're supporting the partner organization, get involved with partner meetings or QBRs that we have with our partner channel and motions. And so that's the roll up your sleeves, is just you got to get in there, talk to people. Sometimes operation folks, it takes them out of their comfort zone, where I'm the data person. I don't like talking to people I don't know, right? But and it's not that you have to show up on a call and run the thing. Like, even sometimes if you're just a fly on the wall and just listening to not only what the customer, prospect, or partner says, but how they say it. like that is the piece that our data often doesn't show or shed light on. So getting that context now allows you to start merging the art and the science, right? And
Yeah.
really getting smart with the data is showing us something, and we know why it's showing us that.
Yeah, no, for sure. Like, I mean, one thing, again, more from like a product perspective, but I think it's comparable. Like, I always found helpful is then talking to the salespeople, and like as a starting point, and just like getting an understanding of like how their day actually works, like what kind of like tasks and jobs to be done they have, and how they're currently trying to solve that, and then kind of like trying to categorize and map that sort of like in my head. And then from there, asking them to, hey, would it be okay if I actually joined one of like your next like customer meetings, and ideally in person, because then I think it's like even like on another level. And what I found is that salespeople actually like they react extremely appreciative to this. So if you go to a salesperson who's like, hey, I'm really interested in what you're doing, would really like to learn more. Could I join you on your next like in-person meeting with company XYZ? They'd be like, yeah, man. Like that actually would be amazing if you joined. Like I could really use the support. Like So I think it's like really good not to be afraid. Yeah. Sorry.
But it's a really good point you make too, because the thing that we often forget about is, depending on the go-to-market motion and the personnel and the maturity of the company, of course, sometimes the sellers, they're out there on an island, right? And they're kind of figuring things out as they go sometimes, particularly those that maybe haven't been at the company for a while or haven't been in the space. I mean, there's enablement and onboarding that happens, but it's like anything else, the practical nature, like you have to do it to learn. And they are so appreciative, to your point, that there is someone in the organization, whether it's someone who supports me directly or indirectly, right? A RevOps analyst or a product manager. They're thrilled that they've got the support and that they're able to brainstorm and work with others in the organization to solve a customer problem or figure out what the customer need is if it's very early stage and you're building an MVP product, for example. So they're very appreciative, and I think that's the takeaway for people is, like, if you ask, 99% of the time they're going to say, yes, please join me, help me, right? It's very rare when they give you the Heisman and say, no, stay out of my world, right?
I think it's very interesting because, like, when you think about the customer journey, it often starts a lot earlier, right? Like kind of in the awareness stage. And so obviously your positioning and messaging frames that quite a bit. And understanding that is actually really an art. It is very hard to test. You can run experiments, but it's really difficult to do. So understanding the messaging, positioning, the awareness stages, the different channels that drive pipeline. And then what we see a lot, and I think that has changed a lot, is that before people start booking demos or starting to talk to sales, they already are very educated. They already know a lot. They've done their research, right? They go into chat-based systems and figure out what's going on, right? So this actually frames a lot of the journey already there that is often very hidden and is not quantifiable very much. So like that's the initial framework with top of funnel. Then you get into the conversation. I think there's this tendency right now that with AI, you can even operationalize or automate the intake process for RevOps, right? Which means basically I have, a service desk, and the service desk has now AI. So I don't need to talk to more folks, which I fully understand, because I understand that, we're all getting bombarded with so many different requests that also don't really make sense, right? I think everybody knows this, and everybody is suffering from that. But at the same time, to go into the field and really understand whether your sales process is mirroring the customer journey, your sales process is increasing the win rate, your sales process is increasing the chance of renewal expansion, like that cannot be forgotten, right? And this is also like what drives revenue significantly. And I think we have this notion of like, how do you become a COO, right? You've been a COO. How do you become a CRO as a RevOps person, right? If you don't understand this, there's no way that you get there, right? There's no way that you get there. This is fundamentally important. And I'm curious what you think about that.
Yeah, you're right on. I think particularly when we talk about career pathing, the path from revenue operations to a broader operational role, whether it's a COO or a general manager or something like that, is becoming more prevalent. And I think it's because there are some really good operational people that are expanding the breadth of their knowledge of the company's, not only their sales cycle, but their post-sales cycle, right? Like, getting a customer in the door is one thing, keeping them is a whole other thing, and those two have to come together, right? And I think for operational folks that understand the whys and the early stage of, exactly to your point, the customer is more educated than ever. So why are they talking to us? Like, in spite of all this education, are they further down the process? Are we not doing a good job communicating it? And then flip it to the post-sales world, where why should this customer remain a customer? Why do they want to remain a customer? Why do we want them to remain a customer? Like, the two don't always mesh. And so understanding that thread that goes all the way through a process and an organization is key. And you're right, from a broader operational capacity, like, that's what RevOps people specifically can bring to COO roles and so on, right? Because they understand more than just what the data or the systems are telling them. They've got the context at both ends, the front end and the back end.
Hey, Philip here. Are you enjoying this episode? Well, good news, because you can find more free RevOps and go-to-market resources on getweflow.com/RevOps. Access over 20 cheat sheets, reports, and guides that will help you become a better revenue operator. Or join over 2,000 subscribers who already get the latest resources right into their inboxes with our free newsletter. Just go to getweflow.com/RevOps.
Do you have like any specific examples where this is, where basically you can look at the data, but the reality looks different? Like, anything that you've seen in your career?
Yeah, there's a bunch of examples. I think the one that might resonate with the audience is what most of us lived through in the SaaS world here the past couple of years, where there was just unexpected churn coming out of nowhere, right? And a lot of us, if you were just focused on the dashboards and the metrics, you saw customers that had adopted your product, that were very engaged with your product, but they churned, right? And without going to where the money changes hands and talking with customers and prospects, you would have never gotten the context of what was happening in their world, where they might have been being asked to cut costs. And it was hard decisions on their side, where they had a bunch of tools and platforms that they were using and were critical to their business, but they were being asked by their management or their executives to rethink the business. And I understand we have a lot of great tools. We've got 12 tools that are critical, but if you can only have 8 of them, which 8 are you going to use, or whatever the example is? Yep. So I think having those conversations earlier, having them with customers in person, online, would have revealed that context, and that would have allowed us, I think, to be a bit more proactive. If it was a cost issue, great. Yeah. We've got playbooks to get ahead of that, right? If it was a business process transformation issue, great. We've got a playbook that we can leverage. And certainly not to say that all of the unexpected churn would have been saved, because that's not the way the world works. But if you could have saved 20% more, 30% more than you did, like that, it makes a meaningful difference. So I think that's the one that comes to mind. The other very practical one, and our product expert on the call here can certainly weigh in, where you build a product and you take it to market and you don't see the traction on it because you kind of haven't built what the customer really wanted, right? You built something, but it's not addressing maybe one of their key pain points for a certain use case. And so you're not getting that uptick, and it's not driving the revenue curve in the way you predicted, all because you didn't take the time to go talk to people and ask them and say, here's what we're doing. Does this match with what you're trying to solve or the pain that you have, right? So those are two examples kind of on two different worlds, but the same premise holds. Like, ask the question, get in front of people, listen to not what they're saying, but how they're saying it.
Yeah. So let me just play this back to you, because I think this resonates really well with me. Like, I think, the churn example is great, because basically you're looking at metrics. You have a health score. You basically have certain understanding of this is health, but actually the assumption is wrong, right?
Yeah.
And you can maybe measure, kind of the usage data. You can measure the touch points, right? Like, that's all fairly easy. What you cannot measure is the context.
Right.
And the context currently is changing drastically, right? So the context of the company, the reality, right? So I think we lived to this ZIRP era, right? Like, into efficient growth. And I think now we're basically hitting a new era, which is basically the AI first era, where suddenly, right? Like, although the companies, the SaaS companies are growing crazy, their valuation is getting hammered, right? And this is like, whether it's right or wrong, this is a reality, and it is a changing market environment. This is a market environment that is old, like 3 months old. If you don't start seeing that in the calls, if you don't start listening to that, right? Like, you might have completely wrong assumptions of the business, which essentially leads to, like, significant revenue loss, right?
Yeah.
And so I think, like, what you're suggesting here is essentially, how do you get, like, closer, obviously, to where the money changes hands, or, where kind of you see the art, but also you understand the business on a deeper level and on a more strategic level, right? And I think that is something that is really profound to me, because I mean, I've been founding companies since I turned 23, and I lived through so many pivots and, dreadful periods where, like it's kind of a, sometimes I feel like, you listen, you talk, you look at data, and at some point it's very clear, and you need to make a strategic decision.
Yeah.
But it's like, it might take a while to get to that point. And so if you're in RevOps, like, I think it's this very, like, we've never talked about this at this podcast. I've actually never talked to anyone about it, but I think it's so true, because it's like go-to-market systems are very, very complex. And the reason might be not that, the environment changes, might be that actually the way you tell the story is not the best story, or the way you do value creation is not the right way. But this is all one. And so if you want to be strategic in RevOps, if you really want to change the fate of the company, right? Like, those are all aspects that are worth learning and fighting for and getting into. So now I'm rambling, like, going all places, but it just really resonates with me.
You're right on. And for folks that are clearly, in the more traditional RevOps audience, right? When I talk to people who are in RevOps and we have career discussions, the one thing that everyone says is, I want to be more strategic, right? They understand there's a strategic part to advancing their careers, and the strategic part doesn't, birth from dashboards and metrics. Like, the strategic part is what we're talking about, going and understanding the business. And if you bring those two together, well, now you've got a complete picture, and you mix the art and the science, right? And so from a career perspective, there's a ton to be gained. And it's exactly what you were saying. It takes people down the, I'm more strategic because I now have this context path.
Yeah. 100%. Really, really, really like it. One thing I think would maybe also be interesting for audience is just like to think a bit about signals. Like, what is a moment in time where I should actually roll up my sleeves? And what is a moment in time where I should roll the sleeves back down? Or how you want to put it. So, because I think that's also relevant, right? Because I think what we're saying here is like, not to like, become like a sales rep, like 6 months of the year. That's definitely not what we're saying.
Yeah.
But like, it's about like a short period of time. And it's not always needed, right? Like sometimes you have like a very clear picture of the market, and like, there's not really any benefit to like, shadowing somebody or joining like a sales call. And then there are other moments where it's urgently needed. So I'm curious whether you are aware of any signals that you would recommend people to look out for.
Yeah. So the answer is it depends. There are some natural collaboration points that exist in organizations, whether it's a beginning of year sales kickoff or a revenue kickoff or quarterly reviews where you're face to face with the sellers, and you sometimes you've got customers and partners and prospects as part of those. So there's some natural things, but I think it depends on the territory or the region that's being supported. It depends on the go-to-market motion. But I would say it's a regular cadence, and regular means different things, right? Sometimes it's quarterly, twice a year, certainly at least once a year. If there's new product launches that are being planned for, if there's territory expansion, that could be an area to say, oh, let me get smart and get some context around that. So it depends. But you raise a good point. Like we're not saying go spend 6 months of the year hanging out with sellers out in the field, right? And there's certainly efficient, judicious ways to do it. I think there's still a lot that can be gleaned with content around call interactions, call transcriptions, right? Like we can gain a bunch from that. But to fill in the blanks, that's where you want to make sure you get that context with the sellers.
Just one thing I want to mention, like, Weflow does like conversation intelligence, right? Like, and one of the number use cases that I hear like in calls right now is like people just want to have like raw data access to the transcript because they want to push it into other systems, right? Like clean data, and or they want to use our own AI to just like make sure like that they can really source through all of the transcripts in bulk, and then do things like just ask like Weflow AI, like, hey, like give me a summary of all the objections raised like in the last 3 days during sales meetings. And I mean, it's possible nowadays, so I think it makes total sense to really take advantage of it. But I think it's still like there's still like this you don't have the personal connection in there, and I think it's easy to miss things. Like one thing I think to fast track that, if relevant for people, in my experience, was just joining salespeople at conferences. Because if they are at conferences regularly, then you can actually join like, I don't know, 30 sales conversations, like at least like the discovery and qualification piece, like very well. And then sometimes even like a deeper dive. You just stand with them at the booth. I mean, like, what does it cost you? Like, like 1 or 2 days, short business trip, and go to a new city might actually be like, quite fun. And you meet like a lot of people. You can dive into like, how do the conversations go? What's the vibe and all of this. So I think conferences are like also like just always like a very quick way of doing this.
There's nothing better than meeting with people, whether they are internal to your company or external, in person, right? And conferences, great place to do it.
Yeah. I mean, I think a lot of teams we currently talk to feel like really underwater, right? Like it's a bit like, okay, like teams, everybody cuts, so teams are getting smaller. Responsibilities grow with suddenly, RevOps also being kind of the AI transformation team or orchestrators, right? It's so obviously it's not easy to make that time and so on, but. I mean, if at all, right, like just find some top sellers in the organization, just sit down with them for coffee, every other week or so, just to be closer to the field, right? I think that's also something. And I think maybe one signal that you should do this on a maybe also like broader scale. It's not just RevOps, but also the executives. I've been on a bunch of boards throughout the last 15 years, and what I saw is sometimes there's growth stalling, and the executives actually don't know why. And it actually happens quite often that like at some point, something, right, like inbound stalls or outbound doesn't work as well, or kind of the win rate goes down. and actually the answer isn't clear. And I think that's always a good sign to say, hey, look, we don't know. So we need to learn why.
Yep.
And, if you present that to an executive and say, look, I observed this is a problem. I don't have the answer.
Yeah.
But, I want to explore that because I think that's strategic to the business, right? Like, I think you'll see a lot of support, and then you can also rally people around and try to basically find out, right? So this might be something that's worth considering when you.
Great point.
Agreed.
Nice. All right.
Okay, I think we're like at 30 minutes. I think Philip, you're getting sick. I'm sick. Franco, I hope you're not sick. I don't know. We had this that week here in Barcelona, and it was just too much fun, so we are all a bit sick. But before you go, one last question: any book or research report you would recommend? Doesn't need to be business. Can be anything. Super curious what you say.
Oh, yeah. I won't bore you with, business book or think tank research report. There's plenty of those out there. But a book I recently read, which was a fun book and very practical. It's called Legacy. It's by James Kerr, and it's the story of the All Blacks rugby team and how they foster success, how they scale success, how they ensure success, like day to day, week to week, season to season. And it's a fun book. It speaks to culture that's very relevant to what we do in our world. It's a quick read. It's a fun read. And I really enjoyed it as a non-business book, but kind of half business book. So Legacy by James Kerr.
I mean, and everybody knows the All Blacks, and they're fantastic, dance. So,
high performance in a whole other world than the one we live in, right?
Yeah. It's super cool, actually. Awesome. Franco, thank you so much for coming on. This was awesome. Much appreciated.
Thanks for having me.
Thank you for listening to the RevOps Lab podcast. If you enjoyed this episode and would like to support us, share it with a RevOps friend or drop us a 5-star rating right now. And if you have feedback, questions, or guest ideas, just send a message to Yannis or me on LinkedIn. Thank you and see you next time.